Let me record this. Okay, so we're going to start with the coordinate plane. So we're going to look at a couple examples here. So the first example here, I have this blue point and I have this red point here, okay? So if I was going to do this point would be -5, -4 would be this point. A couple things to be careful of. You want to make sure you use the parentheses when you're naming points, and you do want to put the comma in between them. So that blue point is -5, -4, and this red point would be -2, -2. What did I do? Sorry. -2, -4. So again, I use the parentheses and then the comma. So if I wanted to know what would be the distance between these, between those 2 points. So in the chat, tell me, what is the distance between those 2 points? Good, so a lot of you guys are saying 3 spaces. So yes, it is 3 spaces or 3 jumps. So I would say it's the distance here is 3 units away. So again, most people like to just count the jumps. So I'm starting at this first point and I count 1 jump, 2 jump, and then 3 to get to that point, okay? If you look, this is the third quadrant. If you look, you had all negative numbers, but just because it was negative, somebody said something yesterday, it's still a positive answer because distances can't be negative, so it would be 3. If you looked at your coordinates, you had -5, -4, and -2, -4. If you saw the -4s are the same, so you went from a -5 to a -2. And if I just thought about that without plotting them, how far away is -5 from -2 on a number line? Well, it's 1, 2, 3. So that's how I could also look at distance without actually plotting them. A lot of people do like to plot them and count the jumps, but some people just like to look at these coordinates here. So if I was just looking at these set of coordinates, I see, well, the -4s are the same. So I'm not going to look there. I'm going to look at the distance between -5 and -2. And on a number line, they're 3 spaces away. Okay. Another thing to be careful of was like the last question, the Ed puzzle. You have to look at what the interval is on your x-axis because it's counting by 1. If it's 3 spaces away, then your distance is 3. Okay. If it was counting by 2s and it was 3 spaces away, then technically it would be like 2, 4, 6. So that's just one thing to be mindful of. Somebody asked if we would just subtract the numbers. Don't just think about it as subtracting, because when you subtract negatives, it gets like a little funky. So just think about it. The best way to think about it is to think about how far away are they on a number line. So if I was drawing them on a number line, -5 would be over here and -2 would be here. So it's just 3 spaces away. Okay, let's look at another example here. So I have these 2 blue points here. So if I look at this, the coordinates of this, say to yourself in your head or in the chat, what are the coordinates of this? Because some of us are messing up the coordinates still, so we got to be careful. So what are the coordinates of that one? And then the coordinates of this one. So this one, we should be saying this is -4. Good. A lot of good answers there. -4, 3, because it's X here, then Y, so left and right, then up and down. And over here, this one's -4, and then it went down to -5 here. Okay? So without even counting the spaces, let's look to see if we can figure out what the distance is without counting the spaces. So I had -4, 3, and -4, 5. -4 is the same, so I'm not going to look there. because that didn't change. So I went from a +3 to a -5. In the chat, how far away is a +3 to a -5? So you went from this +3 number to this -5. So I see a lot of good answers. So let's just check by counting the jumps. So if I start here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So our distance here is 8. And very good, guys. And if I did think about a number line, this one was tricky. I'm glad nobody really said 2 and they saw like 3 and 5 and said 2, because the 3 was positive and my 5 was negative. So from -5 back to 0 was 5 spaces, and then from 0 to 3 is 3 spaces. So it's a total of 8 spaces away. Okay, so very good that I saw a lot of 8s there. Any questions on those two problems? Everybody's okay there? So like I said, if you do have questions, just type them in the chat, and as I go, I'll answer them. Let's look at this problem here. So it says city planners are creating a neighborhood map on a coordinate plane. The table shows the location of the neighborhood library and the school on a coordinate plane. So we want to figure out how far away is the library from the school. So I can just determine its distance from the coordinates, or if I needed to, I could draw it out on a little coordinate plane. If you don't have access to printer paper or graph paper, you can always just draw like a little sketch of it. So I'll plot the points first. So if I was plotting -4, good, Ethan gave me a good correct answer. Good, Isabella. -4, -6, that would be over here. And then 5, -6. I gotta move my screen over. Oops. So -4, -6 would be over here, and 5, -6 would be over here. So I can count the jumps, or I can look at the actual coordinates. These -6s are the same, so I have to look at how far away is -4, good Mohammed, to 5 on a number line. Okay, so -4 back to 0 was 4, and then from 0 to 5 is 5, so it's a total of 9 spaces away. So I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so a lot of people like to just count the jumps, or I think it's faster to look at where the difference is in the numbers. Okay. This one. What is the distance from B to C? I'm seeing a lot of good answers. So we went from -6, -3 to 1, -3. So since my -3s were the same, that's not going to tell me anything. So I want to look at this 1 and the -6. So I went from -6 to 1. So good, so it's 7 spaces away. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So -6 back to 0 is 6, and then it crossed over, so you get 1 there. So it's 7 units away, okay? So yes, it's 7 jumps, but we just like to say that we're 7 spaces, but its distance we would just say is 7 units. And again, what we need to be careful of is that this one is counting by ones each time, so that's why it's 7. Somebody asked if you could just like add the different coordinates together. Don't think of it as adding or subtracting, because -6 plus 1 is actually -5. So we don't want to think of it like that. So somebody said something about the numbers over the squares. So this one is at -6 to 1. So then that would be 7 there. Okay, so don't just think about it as adding or subtracting. Think about how far away, if you drew a number line, are they, is the best way to look at it. I think I just have 2 more problems. Let's look at this one. What's the distance between P to V? All right, thanks for letting me know, Jonathan. Lexi, so Lexi said, would you add the absolute values of the numbers? Yes. So from P to V, so this is at, careful with your coordinates of V, P, sorry. So again, X is left and right first, so 3, 0, and then it went down to 3, -2. So that has a distance of 2. What would the distance from R to Q be? So from R to Q. Good, Charlie. Good. I see a lot of good responses there. This is where I tried to get some of you yesterday. So awesome. So we can't do it yet. Okay, very good. So I cannot find the length of a diagonal line. That's something you will learn about in 8th grade called the Pythagorean theorem to do that. Hold on, Ethan just asked a question. Yes, Ethan, you are correct. So that would be when it's positive and negative. So Ethan, you're right there. Good, Sandra. So it's not a straight line. It's that. So if it's not a vertical or a horizontal line, we cannot do it yet. If there is a distance there. And in this one, so this one would actually be 4, 8. The distance here would be whatever the square root of 8 is. And that's not a nice whole number. Okay, so you'll learn that in 8th grade. Let's see. This one. What's the distance between these coordinates? Try to do this without me plotting them. So 0, 5 and 0, 7. Good, so I would look that the zeros are the same there. And then it went from a 5 to a 7. So 0, 5 would be here. And then 0, 7 would be where somebody, thank you, just drew that. And then that would be 2 jumps or 2 spaces. So it just really would be 2 units away. And one other thing let's look at. Okay, 2 more questions and then we're done. This one, in a coordinate plane, what's the distance between -3, 5 and -3, -8? So if I'm just looking at the coordinates, -3s are the same, but we're going from a +5, careful, to a -8. So you went from a +5 to a -8. So -3, 5, and -3, -8 would be off this grid. So I'm seeing some 3s and I'm seeing some 13s. If I look here, if it was -3, 8, then it would be 3, but you're going all the way down to here, so it's 13. Because from 8 back to 0 is 8 spaces, and to get to 5 would be another 5 spaces. So it's a total of 13 away from each other. So again, you're thinking about how far away are they on a number line. And last question. So if you're going up, which coordinate would that affect? Would that affect your x coordinate or your y coordinate if you were going up? All right, thanks, Juliana. So if you're going up, lots of you, awesome, are saying that that's going to affect your y. Going up and down is your y-axis, so that's going to affect the y coordinate. So if I start at 3, 1 and I go up 6 and left 4, if I go up 6, that's going to affect this 1. And would I add or would I subtract 6 if I'm going up 6? So if I'm going up, that should kind of hopefully tell you you would add. So this 1 would now become a 7. And now I want to go to the left 4. So if left and right affects your x coordinate, so if I'm at 3 and I go to the left 4, what's my new set of coordinates going to be at? So I started at 3, 1, and I went up 6 and left 4. So think about what happens when you go to the left on a number line. So my x coordinate was at 3. And I'm going 4 this way. So I got some interesting answers, but my answer should be -1, 7. Okay, and then if you needed to, you could plot it out on a coordinate plane. If I was at 3, 1, that could be like here. Or let me say like 3, 1 would be here. So if I went up 6 and left 4, I'd be over here. Okay, so I'd be at -1, 7. So your up affects your y, and left or right affects your x. If you're going left, we should know what happens when we're going left. We subtract, or we're going into the negatives, or we're decreasing. When we go to the right or up, we're increasing. Okay, so those are all the problems that I had for you. What you're going to do now is there's an assignment on Edge Elastic. I think it may be like 8 questions. Okay, so that's all that is left for you to do. If you want if you want me to send you the link for this video, if you didn't understand something that I did, just private message me and I'll give you the link to the recorded Zoom if you need to. Any questions? So you're going to do Edge Elastic. Okay, so just keep all those things in mind. And then other than that, you're good to go.